In a world where silence is often mistaken for weakness, one quiet man kept his pain buried for years until they gave him a reason to rise. A traffic stop turned deadly. An elderly black man left lifeless on the roadside, but just moments later, his son arrived. Quick flash of boots stepping out of a military vehicle, fade to black. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below and tell us your city or country. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell icon so you never miss a powerful story like this. Because what happened next? No one was prepared for it. It was just after 7:30 p.m. on a humid Georgia evening when Jamal Rivers, a 38-year-old black man with a calm demeanor and razor-sharp focus, cruised down Route 92 in his old black Dodge Charger. He had just finished a long day at his new job as a mechanical consultant and was heading home to his quiet cabin just outside of Atlanta. The road was nearly empty save for the occasional pickup truck rolling past in the opposite direction. The radio hummed softly in the background as Jamal rolled down his window, letting the cool air cut through the heat. A soft smile curled at the corner of his lips. Peaceful drives like these had become his refuge. After serving in Afghanistan for nearly a decade as a U.S. Special Forces soldier, this quiet life was his way of healing. No more war zones, no more watching his brothers fall. Just the rhythm of the road and the occasional check-in with his mother who lived 2 counties over. But peace has a way of attracting trouble. Red and blue lights suddenly lit up behind him like a warning flare. His rearview mirror filled with the image of a white patrol cruiser. Jamal sighed, signaling and pulling over to the gravel shoulder. He knew this wasn't about speeding. He was doing exactly, and the car was legally registered. But this wasn't the first time he'd been pulled over without reason in a county where his skin still made people uncomfortable. The cruiser door slammed. Heavy boots stomped toward his car. Jamal's trained eyes flicked to his side mirror and instantly read the man's posture. Chest puffed, hand resting too comfortably on the grip of his sidearm. The officer's name tag gleamed. Officer Clint Harris. License and registration. Harris barked before Jamal could even get a word. Jamal Rivers stood silently against the cruiser, the cold metal pressing against his back. His hands were now cuffed behind him. He wasn't resisting, but his eyes were alive with calculation. He had been in tighter spots, under enemy fire, in the middle of nowhere, but somehow this felt worse. Because this wasn't war. This was home. You boys seen anything like this? Officer Harris chuckled, holding up Jamal's military ID. Guy thinks this makes him special. Deputy Lane grunted. Probably one of those glory hounds. Flashy uniform. Thinks he's better than the law. They all laughed, but Jamal's focus had shifted. The stranger at the gas station was still recording, now standing behind his vehicle, holding his phone steady. Jamal hoped to God that man had enough battery and courage to keep filming. Inside the cruiser, Jamal sat quietly as the officers searched his car further. They didn't ask permission. They didn't find anything illegal either, just a toolkit, some folded maps and a bag of groceries in the back seat. Still, they rummaged with aggression, like they were trying to invent guilt. Suddenly, Jamal heard a dull thud. One of them had smashed a taillight. Harris yelled, "Looks like damage." That's reason enough. Jamal's jaw clenched. They were setting him up. A few minutes later, Harris opened the cruiser door and leaned in, his breath hot and taunting. "You think you're quiet now, huh? Bet you were loud in uniform. Bet you thought you were a hero, but not out here, not in my town. I served this country," Jamal said quietly, "while you were here harassing civilians." Harris's face hardened. He slammed the door shut. Back outside, Rickson pulled Harris aside. "You sure about this? If that guy really is military, there could be heat." Harris waved him off. "Please. They never fight back. You know how it is. Intimidate them, make up some charges, throw them in a cell for the night. End of story." But Harris hadn't noticed Jamal's eyes watching everything, how they moved, how they communicated. His soldier's instinct was alive, and he was building a mental map. Suddenly, a second vehicle pulled into the scene, a black unmarked SUV with government plates. It stopped quietly across the road. The passenger door opened, and a tall black woman in a navy suit stepped out. She had a badge on her hip and an expression like a steel wall. Her name was Agent Victoria Mendez, and she wasn't here by accident. She walked directly toward the cruiser and tapped the window. "Mr. Rivers?" Jamal turned his head slightly, caught off guard. "You're Jamal Rivers?" "Yes," he answered cautiously. Mendez turned to Harris and the others. "What exactly are the charges here?" Harris puffed up. "Who the hell are you?" She flashed her ID. "Tactical Division, and that man happens to be part of a critical investigation. He's not to be detained or searched without clearance. Release him, now." The officers froze. "Ma'am," Rickson tried to interject. "He looks suspicious. We had probable cause." "You have nothing," she snapped, "and you just assaulted a decorated combat veteran. Do you realize how bad this looks?" Jamal stepped out as Harris reluctantly unlocked the cuffs. Agent Mendez leaned in toward Jamal. "You okay, soldier?" He nodded, rubbing his wrists. "I will be." As the agent turned to leave, Jamal caught her arm. "Wait, let me handle this." She paused, scanning his eyes. "You sure?" He nodded. She stepped back. Harris glared. "Don't think this changes anything, boy." Jamal smiled coolly. "I was trying to leave. You escalated." Suddenly, a deep voice echoed from the distance. "You messed with the wrong one." Everyone turned. A third vehicle pulled up fast. Another SUV, this one armored. The door swung open, and out stepped a massive man in full military-grade body armor, bald head, hard jawline, and scars down one side of his neck. His name was Colonel Darius Vaughn, Jamal's former commanding officer, and he wasn't here to play. "Colonel," Jamal greeted. "Jamal, you all right?" "I'm good, sir." They didn't get far. Darius turned to the officers. "You know who you just laid hands on. This man saved 12 lives in Kandahar. I watched him pull bleeding men through fire while taking rounds to the vest. You think because you got badges you're invincible." Harris straightened up, still defiant. "I don't care who he is. He broke the law." "Name the law," Agent Mendez shot back. There was silence. Darius chuckled darkly. "Didn't think so." At that moment, the man from the gas station walked over, holding up his phone. "I got it all on camera. Everything. You're gonna want this." Rickson tried to step forward, but Agent Mendez blocked him. Jamal stared at the officers, no longer silent, no longer passive. "You have no idea what I've seen," he said. "But now, you've seen me." The air was thick, not with fear but with reckoning. But this wasn't over, not yet. Darren hadn't slept much. After the incident at the gas station, his instincts screamed that something more was coming. He knew how systemic patterns worked. He'd seen them too often during his years overseas. Oppression cloaked in legal uniforms, injustice disguised as routine stops. And now, it was getting personal. He sat in the armchair near the window of his modest suburban home, sipping lukewarm coffee while staring at the sunrise as if waiting for the next chess move from a dangerous opponent. His phone buzzed. "Yo, D," said Nate, his childhood friend. "Saw that video online. The cop's face is all over social. That woman you helped, she posted the whole thing. You good?" Darren exhaled deeply. "I'm good, but it's not over. This guy doesn't feel like the type to take humiliation quietly. You want backup? I can roll through." "Not yet," Darren replied. "Let's see how he plays it." Officer Beckett sat alone in his cruiser outside the precinct, gripping the steering wheel with white-knuckled rage. The humiliation still burned, not just from being tackled, but from losing control, from being exposed in front of his peers. That man made him look weak. Beckett slammed his fist against the dash. Who does he think he is? He opened his laptop and began digging deeper. Vehicle registration. Ownership. Name Darren Cole, formerly U.S. Marine Corps, multiple combat deployments, highly decorated, now living quietly in town. The more Beckett read, the more his anger twisted into something darker. He wanted control back. He wanted power, and in his mind, that meant revenge. Later that evening, Darren heard gravel shift outside his home. His senses sharpened instantly. Old instincts snapped into place. He stepped silently toward the window and parted the curtain. A black unmarked SUV sat across the street. The engine was off. The silhouette of someone watching was unmistakable. Darren picked up his phone and called Officer Janine Alvarez, one of the few honest cops he trusted. "There's someone outside. Feels like a warning," he said calmly. "I'll swing by." "Stay inside," she said. But Darren didn't stay inside. He walked out calmly, standing tall in the driveway with a flashlight in hand. He aimed it directly at the SUV. The engine revved, tires screeched, and it sped off. Not long after, Janine arrived. Her face hardened when he described the SUV. "That sounds like one of Beckett's private units. He's got connections that operate under the radar. Dirty ones. He's escalating," Darren said. The next day, Darren headed to a small veteran-owned auto shop to get his tires checked. Someone had slashed them overnight. It was no coincidence. He stayed silent, composed, but his jaw was tight. This was now beyond personal. It was strategic. He walked inside the shop, and the older black mechanic behind the counter, Chuck, looked up. "Heard what happened. You all right?" "I will be," Darren replied, "just keeping my head on a swivel. You let me know if you need anything. My nephew runs a drone surveillance setup. keeps an eye on these kinds of threats. Darren nodded. I might take you up on that. Meanwhile, Officer Beckett met with two off-duty officers in a bar known for its silence, the kind of place where shady deals didn't raise eyebrows. Man's a ghost, one of them said. I've got nothing on him. Then we spook him, Beckett growled. Send a message, something he won't ignore. They decided to rattle Darren's world. Maybe a raid on some trumped-up suspicion. Maybe property damage. Maybe worse. Beckett was spiraling and dragging others down with him. That night, Darren's mother, Miss Lorraine, received a call. A robotic voice warned her to tell her son to back off or pay the price. She was terrified. She called Darren, her voice shaking. Baby, I don't know what this is, but someone called me. Said something bad might happen. Darren closed his eyes. That crossed a line. They brought family into this, he muttered. They've gone too far. The next morning, Beckett drove past Darren's property again, this time in uniform, this time in daylight, like he wanted to show dominance. Darren was waiting on the porch, calm, still, his eyes locked with Beckett's as the cruiser rolled slowly past. Then Beckett made the mistake of getting out of the car. He smirked as he walked up the path. You all right, sir? He asked, voice thick with sarcasm. Got any trouble lately? Darren stood. Not yet, but I sense it's coming. Beckett stepped closer. This is a quiet town. We like it that way. I served in places that were quiet, until people like you turned them into war zones, Darren replied coolly. Beckett leaned in. Watch yourself, soldier. Darren didn't flinch. You're not the first to threaten me, but I promise you'll regret being the last. Beckett's face twitched, and he backed away. But as he returned to his car, a neighbor was filming the whole thing from their phone across the street. It was already live on social media, and the world was watching. The video of Officer Beckett's veiled threat against Darren spread like wildfire. It wasn't just the words, it was the body language, the tone, the smirk that screamed centuries of unchecked power. But it was Darren's composed response that captured hearts. The internet dubbed him the Quiet Storm. Within hours, hashtags trended. Justice for Darren, Silent Soldier, Beckett exposed. Mainstream news picked up the story. Interviews were requested. Activists and veterans alike rallied around Darren's name. But while the world watched with growing anger and admiration, Beckett was losing control of the narrative and his grip on reality. Beckett sat in his office, drenched in sweat and rage. Papers were scattered across his desk. He'd been reprimanded by his captain, warned to keep his distance, but obsession had already taken root. He called his cousin Kyle, former military gone rogue, now in private security. I need someone who doesn't ask questions. Kyle's voice was flat. How dirty are we talking? Black bag, no cameras, just fear. There was a pause. Send me the address. Meanwhile, Darren wasn't idle. With Janine's help, he'd begun to build a quiet defense. They reviewed body cam loopholes, mapped Beckett's unofficial visits, and compiled testimonies from others the officer had harassed. Some spoke anonymously, others were ready to go public. Darren knew how corruption operated. It wasn't loud. It whispered through broken systems and hidden records. He'd fought warlords abroad who were more honest than the bad apples in law enforcement at home. But what Beckett didn't know was this. Darren had connections. Before retiring, he'd been part of a covert military intelligence unit. He'd built trust with high-level officers, federal agents, and deep tech teams who owed him favors and remembered his loyalty. He made one call, and Marcus, I need surveillance help. Audio, drone, facial recognition, clean and legal. The voice on the other end didn't hesitate. On it, I'll deliver everything encrypted. Stay off-grid with it. That night, Darren installed microdrones around his property. The tiny devices were nearly invisible and sent live feeds directly to a secure server. They recorded heat signatures, audio, and movement. He also visited his mother. Are you okay? He asked as he hugged her tightly. I'm scared, she whispered. I thought those days were behind us. They're not, Darren replied. But I'm not the scared little boy they used to push around. I'm prepared now. Across town, Kyle and his men waited outside a nondescript warehouse. Beckett handed them a grainy map of Darren's property. No blood, he hissed. Just scare him, humiliate him. Kyle looked Beckett square in the eye. You want to scare a trained ex-soldier in his own territory? You afraid? Beckett sneered. I'm just saying, Kyle said, cocky. You better hope this guy is who you think he is, and not something more. At 3:12 a.m., the trap was sprung. 3 masked men crept onto Darren's land with infrared goggles and suppressed tasers. They moved like ghosts until the first man tripped a silent alarm and was immediately spotlighted by a flash of piercing white light. The sound of a loading shotgun echoed from behind them. Drop it, Darren's voice boomed from the shadows. Two froze. One turned and tried to run, only to be tackled by Janine, who'd been lying in wait with her service weapon drawn. Darren stepped forward, unmasked and calm. "You're not cops. Who sent you?" The men were silent. Janine crouched beside one and hissed, "You're on multiple hidden cameras. You want to spend 20 years in prison for an off-the-books job?" Finally, one cracked. "Beckett." It was Beckett. Darren stood still for a moment, then muttered, "It's time." By morning, Darren had compiled the footage, testimony, and the confession into a digital file marked Exposure. He sent it to 3 places: the local FBI field office, an independent journalist with a reputation for tearing corruption apart, a secure military contact with access to federal oversight. Then he waited. He didn't have to wait long. FBI agents entered the building, badges raised, computers were seized, officers were questioned. Beckett, red-faced and trembling, tried to demand a lawyer. "You're being investigated under federal civil rights violations, conspiracy, and abuse of power," one agent said coldly. "You might want to sit down." As Beckett was led away in cuffs, reporters surrounded the building. Meanwhile, Darren remained home. He didn't gloat, he didn't post online. He simply walked back to his workshop, poured himself a glass of water, and sat at the bench where his father once taught him how to build. But it wasn't over. Something darker was still in the shadows. A voice message popped up on his burner phone. The sun rose slowly over the quiet stretch of road just beyond Darren's property, casting long shadows across the land that had now become a battleground for justice. While the world praised Darren as a hero for exposing a racist officer and surviving an illegal ambush, he knew it was far from over. The message haunted him. "You made enemies, soldier, real ones." This wasn't just about Beckett anymore. It was about everyone behind him. While Beckett rotted in federal custody, his cousin Kyle had gone underground. The mercenaries were missing. Files were scrubbed. Even the names of those who backed the hit attempt had been encrypted and vanished from public systems. But Darren wasn't just any veteran. He didn't fight wars to be threatened in his own country by shadows. He activated an old contact, Zane Wheeler, a former cyber intel operative turned whistleblower, living off-grid in Arizona. Zane owed Darren his life. A one-word message was all it took. Now, within hours, Zane delivered the first batch of untraceable metadata, showing financial trails, encrypted communications, and covert networks tied to corrupt forces far bigger than one racist cop. Back in town, Janine began receiving anonymous threats. Scratched cars, unmarked letters, police cruisers, idling too long near her apartment. One evening she returned home to find her dog poisoned and a note on her mirror, "Next is you." Janine didn't flinch. Instead, she moved into Darren's home and joined him fully in the mission. "I'm not hiding," she said, loading her Glock. "They picked the wrong woman." Then came the night everything erupted. A convoy of black SUVs arrived unannounced at Darren's home just past midnight. These weren't street thugs. They moved like military, tight formation, tactical gear, silenced weapons. But Darren had been waiting. He didn't barricade himself. He invited them in, with calculated traps. As soon as they breached the outer gate, pressure mines immobilized the front vehicle. Drones lit up the sky like fireflies, tracking each intruder. Flashbangs detonated from buried sensors, blinding several as they ran toward the workshop. Inside, Darren and Janine moved like clockwork. Darren took position behind a steel workbench reinforced with ballistic panels. Janine monitored heat signatures through the drone feed, calling out their movements. They're flanking left, 2 of them fast. Darren adjusted his rifle's scope. Got them. One shot echoed, rubberized, non-lethal rounds. He wasn't looking to kill, he was gathering evidence again. Then came the ringleader, Kyle. He kicked through the side door, eyes bloodshot, a machete in one hand and a silenced pistol in the other. "You think this is justice, Darren?" Kyle snarled. "This is war." Darren stood his ground. "You attacked my home, my family, all because I didn't back down?" Kyle aimed the pistol, but Janine burst through the back hallway and shot the weapon out of his hand in one move. Kyle screamed in pain, dropping to his knees. Darren stepped forward. "You had a choice," he said, "but now you'll become part of the same exposure file. And this time, it goes straight to the Department of Defense." By morning, headlines exploded across every platform. Retired black veteran thwarts night assault by rogue forces, ties to deep police corruption uncovered. FBI praises heroism of former soldier who stood up to racist officer and illegal militia strike. America watches as truth wins in face of brutality and hate. Footage from the night's invasion had already gone viral. Drone recordings, body cams Darren installed secretly on the compound, audio confessions, tactical movement logs, all of it handed over to federal agents with ironclad evidence. Within 48 hours, 3 more officers were arrested, 2 city councilmen resigned, and a full-blown investigation into a nationwide web of racially motivated abuse in uniform began. But none of that mattered more than what Darren did next. He stood in front of a small crowd outside City Hall, beside Janine, his mother, and local community leaders. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just told the truth. They tried to silence me. They tried to scare me. But I fought overseas so people could have a voice here at home. If they think we'll back down, they didn't see us coming. The crowd erupted. Not in anger, but in hope. And so Darren, a man forged in war, tested by corruption and guided by honor, didn't just fight back. He changed everything.